Welcome to Low-Code Campfire for March 28, 2025. This is episode number 188. It is an open lines Friday, but we have a few topics on the schedule to talk about. I am Dale Warner, Head of Support for Plant and App, joined capably by Patrick Anderson, Technical Success Manager for Plant and App, and people from the community. This is an event that we do every Friday, 10 a.m. Central Time. It's a all skill levels welcome meeting from beginner to expert and everything in between. We want to get together, talk about the Plant and App techniques and challenges and experiences that we've been going through, and we hope that you bring something to show and be ready to help your fellow low coders. We record all of these and put them on YouTube at youtube.com/plantandapp. That together with other resources that we publish like the Low-Code Cafe. So we highly advise that you go to the QR code that you see there or the URL, youtube.com/plantandapp, and subscribe, set your alarm bell so you know just as soon as we publish something. Week by week, we generally run this agenda where we stop and say hello for a minute, and then we'll go around the campfire, do anything first call, anything that you came to the meeting and wanted to talk about, and anything that you submitted in advance. There's no user submitted topics today in advance, but as I said, I have one or two things to talk about. And then we'll talk about any of these other things. I do want to get to feature requests today, so be thinking about that one a little bit. And then after an hour or so, we go to Afterglow. That's where we turn the recording off at the top of the hour and hang around for a few more minutes and enjoy each other on a personal level, raise an adult beverage, and begin our weekend. There's lots of ways to engage. You can jump right in, show and tell, use the chat, and sometimes people raise their hands, which is interesting. We have, as I mentioned, you can submit questions and topics in advance, either through this QR code, which takes you to a form you can fill in, or you can send an email to support@plantandapp.com. Hello, all. Welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Did anybody come with a first call?
Well, there's always something.
Well,
We had, I sent a support ticket in, and it's a general kind of question. It might be helpful for other people, and it had to do with log files. So Plant and App can generate a whole bunch of logs, and uh, uh, I noticed that my DNN site got very large. In fact, I ran out of, I had an application that was putting job postings up, and the client contacted me saying, hey, I got three of the four ones that I wanted to put up, and the fourth one just kept saying there's an error. And the error was I ran out of disk space.
mm-hmm.
So, what's the best class for clearing out the log files?
So good question. I'm working on bringing up on another screen. So DNN generally has a mechanism for bringing out logs, and so we'll take a look at that. Plant and App uses that mechanism. The log mechanism is log4net. And I am logged in here, so that's good. You can find, and so the control over your logs, you should be able to do most of it from here, although you may also want to clean things out. So in the config manager, if you're a super user, you have the ability to get into the .NET Nuke log4net config, and this XML file, typical of DNN, it's all configured through XML, controls all of the different ways that loggers work. And so one of the first things to pay attention to, um, and yeah, these are file logs. Thanks, Ben. Not database logs. Um, so one of the first things that is quite important is there is a level. So there's loggers, and loggers have levels. So, for example, anything that is related to action form logging, we send it to the action form log, and the level says how much information we send to the log. And so you can control uh, the level of detail. And in most cases, what you're going to want to have, and I think by default, it's going to say error. So if there's an error, it's going to go to the log. Um, there are other values, debug and trace, and those values say that everything that had occurred to a developer that you might want to know as that module is doing its actions would get sent to the log. And sometimes we ask you to turn that on, or you can decide for yourself to turn that on if we're trying to debug a problem. So one of the most common things that can happen to really fill up logs is that you uh, turn on, like if we're trying to debug something in action form and you had trace here as a value, if you forget to turn that off, now every time anybody anywhere is using action form on your site, it's producing a very voluminous log and will grow to gigabytes very quickly. So that's one big thing that you can make sure that these log levels say error unless you're tracing, unless you're trying to debug a particular problem. Had you checked on that yet in your case, Don?
No, I haven't looked at the log file. I mean, I haven't looked at the settings, the config manager yet.
Um, when you're looking at a log, the settings, and actually it might just be fun to well, it might be a little off topic. We'll see. We could turn on a log and see the level of debugging that goes on with that, um, and see it increase. So maybe that's something we can get into. So that's one thing. But um, the values here, max size role backups controls how many logs are kept. So my system is configured to do 5, which should result in automatically deleting anything older than the last 5 logs, which it rolls over every 5. It's also set to somewhere here. One of these choices have to do with once per day, rolling style date. I think that does it. But so in a sense, this is keeping 5 days worth of logs, unless they grow very voluminous. When they grow above 10 megabytes, then it would create a new log file. So then it might be less than, if we're getting a lot of information in the log, it might be less than 5 days. It might be one day's worth in 5 different files. So in any case, this is probably the thing that's going to keep it from just growing to infinity. And then one thing that Log4net is a very common product that AI engines like GPT understand. And so if you're trying to figure out what particular settings do, it's very easy to take pieces of your Log4net configuration and use GPT to research. I have a Log4net configuration. What does this do? And it'll explain it quite well.
Oh, so Log4net is a commercial item. It's a standard, I mean, not standard,
Yes,
but
it's it's
well-used
it's it's
system.
it's not a plant and app mechanism. It's one that we're using,
Got
and it's
it.
built into DNN, the platform.
So there's
That we're
some
really
list that
talking about
says
here.
what those logger values should be. Like I saw
Correct.
info, error,
If you were to
trace.
go, yeah, if you were to go to the Log4net site, I'm sure there is one someplace or wherever it lists, go through the documentation, it would know that. But as I mentioned, AI knows it as well. Um, so now we kind of get into what specifically are you seeing? If you go in and look at the logs, I mean, I'm not asking you to show or tell me, but if you go in to a particular product and follow this logging path, okay, the logging path is portals underneath your root portals default logs, you're going to see that's where these things get created in different folders. If you look at a folder and you find the, for example, the DNN Sharp action form folder, and there's more than 5 files there, then maybe the max size roll backups isn't configured or isn't configured correctly. So if you're finding hundreds and hundreds of files uh, and nothing's getting deleted, maybe there's some configuration change you want to do to do that.
That makes sense. That's probably the case. I'm seeing a large number of them. And I'm assuming that means that it's perfectly okay for me to use something like remote desktop to go into the server, into that folder, and just delete all those files because of, that was the concern I had. What happens if I do delete them? Is there a system that's expecting
Yep.
them there? And because I don't have it configured correctly, if I go and delete them anyway, is the
Yep.
system who's not configured correctly going to blow up? So
My
I try to avoid those things.
So I have something of this system that I'm working on here now is my test system, and it's quite expendable, very much backed up. And so, in response to your ticket, I went in and just deleted out all the logs below that were in the DNN Sharp folders. And as soon as the app was recycled, of which, or I'm sure as soon as it needed it, it would create the files, recreate the folder structure. So I tried to be as violent with it as I could be. Just get rid of everything. Let's see what happens, and it worked just fine without complaining. If so, you could do that. You could also be surgical, and meaning go into folder where you're finding 1,000 files and delete the ones that you don't care about, but keep the most recent 5 days so that you have them to refer to. I mean, obviously, if you delete everything, you have no more logs until history builds up again. So you have choices.
Got
So
it.
Don and I have been talking. I'm sure some or all of you have had experiences that would probably be useful to share. Patrick, I'll call on you because I can.
But Ben's raising his hand.
Oh, well, oh, okay, he's messing with me. All right, come on, Ben, tell me, tell me.
Don't want to interrupt. Question. This log for net config that you have here, this is directly for the default logs folder, what's in there, or is it what's nested within that further? Like which log files, because there's so many different folders,
Right.
which one does this control?
Well, I can log for net config. This config that I'm looking at controls all of them. So,
So everything that's in the DNN sharp folder, and then underneath that, action form, grid, API, all of those is controlled by settings in here.
Yeah. And you
yeah,
can actually specify the location, can't you, Teal? I think.
yeah, there's a lot that you
Hmm.
could do
Hmm.
with
Yeah.
this. We add stuff
Okay.
automatically, but if you so I think, and again, GPT will do a great job of explaining, but I think we have this default appender called rolling file, or rather, we created an appender called rolling file. Um, at the root level, we're saying use rolling file. So I think unless you specify otherwise, these parameters apply to every logger that you create. So if I'm reading this
Okay.
correctly, the DNN sharp.
The, there's a reason why I ask, only
Okay.
because I have the same settings you do, and it does not stop at 5 files.
Okay.
I just recently, actually, it's funny you bring this up because I just wrote this yesterday. I had to write my own code to manage those log files because I was in the thousands, um, because I didn't realize all those log files were, there's nested within all the other folders. I mean, I had months worth of log files because it's one every single day. And I had log files not only for the website, but I had log files for all the internal DNN Sharp folders and whatnot. So it was like gigs worth of data in that log folder. And I ended up creating an automation to basically run through all of the files within the main default logs folder, pull out the file name, look at the date, and if it's outside of 3 months, that's as max that I want to save right now, delete them. That's the only way I was able to at least automatically get it done. So now once a day, my system just runs, deletes anything that's older than 3 months, and I can move on. But um, that max size role backups, because I looked at that just now and I'm like, wait a minute, I just wrote this for nothing. And I look and I'm like, nope, I have the same setting you
Well,
do, and it's not
there
limiting.
may be a configuration issue that you're running into, but yeah, that
I've
should.
never touched this area,
Huh?
so it's
Well,
whatever the default is.
but there could be, for example, be um, the user might not have the ability to delete the files, something along those lines. Um, but I'm going to call this up so that we can see it at work here a little bit. I've got got my test site, and I'll get into the file system here in just a minute as it loads. But I just wanted to show. So with nothing more than and explain this and to chat GPT and throwing it into throwing some of this file in there. It's a big file, and so it explains it. So it figured out quickly that it's a log4net configuration, and explained each of these things. So um, max size role backups 5 should, according to again, according to GPT, it should be limiting. Um, and then again, explains piece by piece what it is. And if you wanted to say, well, I wanted to do something different, I'm sure GPT would help us come up with that. So let's take a look. Let's say, where is the um, so it's saying that it's going to be in action form logs. Let's go look at um, my file system here. So we have portals, default, logs, DNN sharp, action form. See, I reset all this yesterday, deleted everything out, as I mentioned to Don, and it just was fine. But there were when I looked in here, there were only 5 logs in here. So um, one thing that you might check is to make sure that the permissions allows the DNN user, the folder permissions allows the DNN user to delete files in
Yeah,
there.
they do. I have full
Okay, I'm
permissions. Yeah,
um
it was the first thing that I thought of too. I was like, oh, but
yep.
yeah, I checked that.
So it's a log for net pattern. If it's not doing it, I mean, we might be able to help you figure out why, but um, I think this is the mechanism. Patrick, do you have any experience with using with the logs either?
Not certainly not more than you do. I feel like there I have seen situations, but I need to. I'm trying to find an example. Actually, I'm trying. I feel like I've seen situations where the logging level seems to be uh, it's the actual file itself is collecting more than what the logging level says, but I'm trying to find an example to see if I can see that. So there may be situations where, that, and I'm not sure what it would be about, but there may be situations where the settings you put in here don't work, but I'm not sure.
Well, so let's explore a little bit more. And again, if anybody else has something to chime in, please do. Um, but since we're talking about it, I thought I would demonstrate, for example, Some of these logs, some of our logs show up here on, yeah, here's a good one, search boost. Well, we could do that.
You know what I did notice though is on one of my sites, the root log is set for the log level is set for all, and so that's something to look for too. You can go in there look for error or info or debug or something like that. But if you have all, that means basically that's your I'm guessing is your highest logging level.
Uh,
And I don't know if yours is set like that, um, but I did see that in one of my sites right here. Is that the yeah, root is level says all.
yeah, so it says all captures everything. So that would be fun. So root value error. So it looks like you could override it to be very verbose at the root level. That's interesting. So this is configuration manager. Log config the root, changing it to all. And these are instantaneous, by the way. So if now we were to go into, I'm going to try tokens and do math token here. Just test that out. That, and then I'm going to put it back the way it was so we're not generating a ton. One more. We'll do a quick index on search. Quick. So this is the every 10-minute or the every small index process, incremental index. So a few jobs running, and then I'll go turn that off. The DNN interface sometimes makes you refresh the page in order to go back to the same thing. So here we are, log4net. We'll change this back to error. Thanks for mentioning that because I wasn't aware that you could change it at the root level, but that would be certainly something to look for. If it's set to all and it's overriding everything, that would, or defaulting everything, that would be annoying. All right, so if we were to now go to, we should be able to see these in the logs. Sorting by date, and we have search boost with the current date on it. Okay, the change that we made, probably there was a specific one on search boost, and so it didn't get beyond info. We do see that it did some indexing, but we can see it's all at the info level. So let's try again. We do config manager. And this time we'll find search boost. Here's search boost, and its level is set to info. So this is probably overriding the root one. So this one, if we set it to all for search boost and save it, and now we'll repeat that same exercise. And again, I'm going to turn it off. Put it back to its default. Now, for convenience, I'm finding these in our logs, but you could find them on the file system as well. We'll go look for them in a minute. But it's nice because it's one-click download and being able to edit. So now you can see that we had our info lines from before, and then our next one, we see a bunch more information. Still does the info ones, but we're also seeing other things. So it's kind of I mean, if you want to understand more about what these products do, you could turn them on and do something and then take a look. Or just do these and hand them to our developers, but it's kind of intended to make sense. So we can see that it's finding our demo trial server. It gets the behaviors, how many it got, consuming the queue. It's working through the queue, getting 100 jobs, blah blah blah. And so you can see it working through all the things until it's done, and then it stops. So it starts revealing a lot more about what it's doing. And these are all things, the lines the developers have added to the code. So you can see if you turn on all or higher levels that you get a lot more lines, and some of them can be very voluminous. So looking for that in the file system, let's see if we can find it. Search boost, and yeah, same file here. Oh, yep. Gotta double check here. What did I? Oh, that's fine. Just making sure I didn't reveal something that I shouldn't have, but you're not going to know what that is. So no harm, no foul there. So it put it in DNN sharp search boost. And I think if we follow the logic of the configuration file, you could see how it arrived at that. So two ways to get to them: through our interface under logs or through the file system. So this is setting a root. This is what the file ends up being named. So year, month, day, log resources, and then the logger name is DNN sharp search boost. So it's under ref. That may be the file. I don't know. Oh, no, there's a separate appender for DNN sharp search boost. So it's using this one, not the default one. And that's why it ends up being in the DNN sharp search boost folder. So just like reading a web config, can get a little bit complex, understanding exactly how to get there. And the fact that there can be different appenders could also account for different behaviors, meaning right, we have this max size role backups. This is the value that's going to apply to search boost, not the one that's, the default one that's at the top of the file. So depending on which one is being used, you get different behaviors.
Yeah, this has helped quite a bit. Thank you. The key thing for me was letting it grow and finding configurations for how to not make it grow, so I don't have to be
Actively managing it.
surprised
Mm-hmm.
that I get an error that the system's out of space, and that's not good. But So this helps quite a bit. Just an interesting aside here. Um, one of the first examples you had in here was trace. And so while you were doing the digging and experimenting, I went over to ChatGPT and asked what the levels were, and it didn't give me trace. And so I said, well, okay, there you go. That I got that same list that when I asked as when what you're showing on your screen. So I said, well, is there a trace level? And they said, no, there's no trace level. But if you wanted to make one, so I'm thinking, oh my gosh, there's another level that they didn't tell me about of different other rules. I mean, what other words can I type in and get some kind of result? The black box approach can be scary.
Well, this is probably something in the DNN implementation of Log4net that we have this trace, don't you think?
That's my guess. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what that DNN put that in there. They showed ChatGPT shows the technique for adding a custom level. So I would imagine that's what they did. Being very old school, I don't trust these systems.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's great when it's working, but when you start digging into it and you find uh, that there's potentially other things that are in there. Just as another interesting aside, somebody showed me yesterday that if you ask Siri the phrase, I see a little silhouette of a man, it will recite to you the rest of Bohemian Rhapsody. So that's the thing about inputs and outputs into a black box and you don't know what you get. Sometimes they're
Yes.
fun. Sometimes you could break everything.
It absolutely. And that's kind of an ongoing topic with the AI. But so it's information. You still have to vet the information. But um,
Exactly.
yeah.
But thanks, I've
It,
got a
it if
working system now with less logs, but I do have to go in and configure the logs configuration now so that I don't have that problem creep up on me again.
Yep. And that's why kind of the direction I was going, if I were faced with a similar circumstance and I was doing the setting it to if I wanted 5 days for or 5 logs, for example, I would set it up as such and then make sure to check in on it in 7 days and make sure they were deleting off so that it doesn't run away again. And just keep poking at
Exactly, that's the plan.
it. Mark says that ChatGPT said action grid results could be cached. No. So, all right. So yes, gotta vet the information. Um, did anybody else come with something to talk about? Couple things on my list. Um, it was determined even today that we are announcing 127 beta coming on Wednesday in the Low-Code Cafe. We're also going to be talking about some other topics having to do with trying to organize ourselves so that we attack more and have more freedom to um, get in and work on some of these long-standing enhancement requests and things that we encounter, bugs that have been reported to support and things like that. And so we're working on a plan and hope to be able to explain the plan on Wednesday as well, how it's going to, and we'll have some. It really, yeah, I don't even want to get into it today, but just to let you know, we're organizing ourselves to get more done. So hopefully that'll have a good impact on this group. But beta it should be out on Wednesday. It should be a pretty extended beta period, meaning once we get it out the door, I think the current thinking is that, the current thinking is that April 20 is Easter, and we have quite a few people out during the Easter holidays. So the final release will not be any sooner than that. We want to have all hands on deck when we do to finally do the full release. So there should be 3 weeks to a month anyway to look at the beta. So then the next thing we're trying to determine is how we're going to approach beta, meaning in the past it takes us quite a bit of effort to um, uh, create a create the formal test that we've done in versions gone by, and in the last round there wasn't much participation in that, so we're trying to gauge whether there's going to be much community input into beta or whether it's going to be more hit and miss. So anyone have any thoughts about and Ben has his hand up. Is that still or again?
Again, it was regarding the log thing. I know you moved on, so I apologize. I don't
No,
mean
no,
to
let's
backtrack.
backtrack.
Um, just really quick, I was just doing a little bit more research on why my system has way more files, and according to what I am seeing here, the max size roll backups, which is set to 5, that only takes effect if the rolling style is set to size, because that's talking about how big each log file can get. So it will duplicate multiple log files within a day and append a number at the end of each one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you'll get up to a maximum of 5 daily logs at 10 megabytes each if you set rolling style to size. When you set it to date, max file size and max size roll backups are ignored. They don't mean anything. So having that set to 5 does not mean you're limiting it to 5 log files. You will have hundreds of files if you don't manually go into your log folder and delete your old ones. Unless you set well, actually, no, setting the rolling style to size will still only affect the day that it's logging. It's not going to affect previous days.
Oh, interesting. So this says rolling style should be composite. Does that coincide with what you learned, Ben?
I haven't seen that particular one. I was just looking specifically what the max size roll backups affected. And like I said, from what I saw, it
Yep.
said it only affects it when the style is set to size, and it's ignored if it's set to date.
It looks like experimentation will be of value here, and I might have a yeah. I'll spend more time on this between now and next week if anybody else does and has information to report. But it'd be nice to have a nice to have a nice configuration that does this rather than having to do uh, some other extra work to get it to happen. Good. Thanks for coming back to that. So thinking about the next 3, 4 weeks, if you have interest in, I mean, I'm not trying to put anybody in the spot, but if you have interest in participating in the beta and at what level, I'd love to hear more. And if we, based on that information, we may try to figure out whether we'll use the formal beta process that we've had before or some other process. And now Don has his hand up.
Regarding this the beta, I have a couple of sites that I would be happy to run it, and there's a couple of sites that really would benefit from having a DNN, a higher version of DNN. And so, what is the compatibility that you're targeting, the DNN level?
I believe it's 9.13.7.
Got it. Okay. So that's fantastic. I believe that's latest. I mean, 10 is around the corner, but that's a big jump for a lot of people. Getting the latest 9 is wonderful.
And that's always the tension, right? We have to pick and test against something and say, yes, we know this works. Uh, um, Lots of times people get ahead of where we are as well, and that's okay, but it's just we call that untested, right? If you run into problems, we'll try and help you with them, but can't guarantee that it's going to be uh, a smooth sailing experience. And then on the other end, there is a spot where you get under a level, and that's or rather below. If as we advance our minimums, you might fall below the minimum, that's kind of a hard limit that you need to be above that. I guess while we're talking about it, I would also mention that nine, excuse me, version 1.27 comes with a minimum SQL Server of what is it you're programming, Patrick? SQL Server
2016.
2016. So we're getting
Yep.
in within a decade now. Mark, I see your comment. Thank you that you participate.
And Mark also has his hand up.
Oh, well, here we go.
Hey, sorry for the way I sound. I think I picked up a cold, but I wanted to share that I was recently playing with the contribution that you put up on the site, Dale, about popping up a single form that you've created on your website on one page, popping it up wherever it's needed. And I was able to, I'm going to brag that I was able to slam that against the right-hand side to make it look like a panel. And that was one of the questions in the community, I don't know, a week ago or two. And so I can contribute that if that's needed. And I'm going to go on to say that I was listening to the DNN Southern Fried meeting last night where they were talking about DNN 10, which is on the verge. And they mentioned in passing that they were disabling DNN pop-ups. They're no longer going to work. And so I'm happy that I was able to make something work, but now I think it's at risk of not working anymore with DNN 10. Do you have any comments?
It's the first I'm hearing of it, but my guess is that they may be talking about there's a setting that lets the login page open and pop up, and maybe some other things open and pop up. I'm guessing that they might be referring to turning that off. You'd have to ask them, but I don't know that they're. I would be surprised if they're disabling the ability to pop up anything anywhere.
Well, they did mention, they said some third-party vendors take advantage of this, so you're going to have to make sure you get upgrades on them. If so, so it sounds like it's a little bit more global than their use of pop-ups.
Okay. Well, thanks for the information. I hadn't heard anything about that yet. Of course, when DNN 10 is, we continually evaluate in our development cycles when to be testing our stuff against that, and when it is out and we start doing that, I mean, that sounds like a great thing to test. I'm sure it's going to pop right to the top if all pop-ups quit working. It'll get our attention.
Okay, and while we're talking about it, the other thing that they mentioned that caught my ear was that they are not loading jQuery anymore, version 10. They said some other module developers might be assuming that it's there, and if that's the case, they're going to need to adjust and load it themselves.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't heard anything. Patrick, have you heard anything about whether we've tested at all against version 10 yet?
I haven't. No,
Yeah.
I don't.
I assume are we in the release candidate stage? I really don't know.
There are two release candidates out at the same time right now. I honestly don't know if one of them is for version 10 or if they're both for something a little bit less. I don't know. It's still early.
Right, and this is exactly why, I mean, hopefully these things will not be an issue, but this is exactly why, uh, we publish a maximum on our, it's basically, again, a tested through. Most of the time, things work just fine when you do a higher version. I know that there was one version of, it might have been a 9.12 that was an incompatibility between our stuff and 9.12 that caused like infinite CPU usage. And so if you ever want to get ahead of us, that's just fine. Just do it in a way that it's either development clone kind of thing, or uh, if it's production that you thoroughly tested and know what you're getting into, because we can't test every version and test it as they come out. We're not organized that way, so we have to
That's
pick
all
something
fine.
and go against it.
Yeah, I mean, we understand how that stuff works. So, but going back to that universal, or you called it generic pop-up form, I just want to say, hey, that works really cool. That fills a void that I have felt on numerous occasions of having a pop-up while using a grid or a listing. In particular, I like to use it under those circumstances and others. So thanks for putting that up there.
Absolutely. Also, I mean, so now while we're doing compliments all around, um, I referred somebody to you had a slide to open contribution that you did, and
Somebody used it?
somebody
Yay.
used it. I mean, I was able to refer somebody to it yesterday or 2 days ago, whatever, and so probably worth the. And it actually, so slide down open was the technique that you showed, and um, they wanted to do a listing, and I said, this looks like it would work for any module, not just listing. Here, follow this technique, and they've reported back, oh yeah, that worked great. So thanks for putting that up there.
That's fun. Love it.
Yep. Um, so I see Ben commented that Log4net doesn't natively support automatic deletion of old log files. Um, so without, I'm just guessing that means that you might have to clean it up yourself and then fix the configuration so it doesn't grow again, versus just setting things so that it starts deleting things, and the configuration itself won't solve the problem, but together with being able to delete them, sounds like it would. All right. So thanks for that. We'll take into consideration how to move forward with beta. Since we were talking about contributions, and I don't know, I missed last week. So if you talked about this, if Patrick covered this, sorry for doing it again. But there was so a couple weeks ago we talked about using Cypress to do automated testing, and so the Cypress resources were put out here for you to go along with that episode. So that's one thing that's been added. And then the other one was summarizing the event log, and I promised to post that, and then it turns out I already had. And it's here, this contribution to summarize the event log. And so anybody interested, it is out there already, but
Is that
so this
a
shows. Pardon?
self-fulfilling prophecy?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, it's just unfortunately it all leaks out on the pillow at night, and I forgot that I put it out here. So to me, this is one that's really quite useful. You see, this is a relatively clean event log. So in the last 7 days, Campfire has gotten uh, these few errors, and so being able to scan a single list instead of scan through the detail, I think helps trying to figure out when a new problem pops up, and then you can go in and dig into the details. And then long time ago in this meeting, Jim mentioned that we should also point out that we were talking extensively first 35 minutes about log files, but the log table, the logs that are in admin logs, is a completely separate thing, which we've dealt with on other days. But this is stored in SQL and can be cleaned up with SQL commands. And we've talked about that, and there's actually a contribution in the Low-Code Campfire, one suggested way to clean up logs, and so I'll just mention it here in our automation section. That we have this daily history table maintenance that does things like this one runs once every day and does things like clean up event log, and it's a SQL query that looks like this that says delete from event log based on how many days you want to keep. And so this is just this together with some other things, good practice to keep your logs from growing. That keeps your SQL database from growing huge. And then earlier we're talking about keeping our log files from being huge. So that's a good pointer. Thank you, Jim. I wanted to mention, and I don't know, we have too much time to get into it, but feature requests, maybe this would be a good topic to think about for next week. As I mentioned, we're reorganizing ourselves to try to get to more of these things, and we'll talk about that in Low-Code Cafe Wednesday. But part of the challenge then is that we are getting the chance to identify things that okay, what haven't we been able to get to, and what should be on the top of the list. And so it's, I think, a great time to advocate for things that are important to you, that whether it's bugs or small enhancements that would have a big impact, things like that, maybe we should be ready to talk about those, and then that gives me the ammunition to bring that to the product committee when we meet. So we've done a good job of listing them, so now they're asking me what should we work on, so let's move them up.
So, Dale, are you asking us to review them and vote?
Yeah, if there's something that, well, a couple of things. Um, if you would want to review them and vote, I think that would be great. And then if there's things that have been uh, that are still important from when you posted them the first time, and you want to talk about them next week, let's do it. Right? Let's say, yeah, this is something that really would help me. So um, I can't say. I, I mean, I want to get them on the list. We'll talk about them in product. I'm never going to promise, though. Yeah, we'll have that done next week. But so yes, vote on them. Yes, if you're something that you want to talk about, we'll set aside time next week to do that.
Okay. I thought of a few more just yesterday.
Um, okay. So I think we're down to final thoughts. Anything that we got 3 minutes to 2 minutes to do anything you want with. Otherwise, we will call it and go into Afterglow.
I got one thing. Kudos on Wednesday's government webinar that you did. The little permit system that you created, very cool. There was well, I'll stop there so you can comment.
No, I was just going to thank you for that, and I think that system will end up in a low-code cafe at some point, because in putting that together, there's some techniques, again, using embedded forms and doing some things. It's a very data-centric design that we came up with, and so I think there's some techniques that are worth showing off and getting into the minds of some more advanced development patterns.
One thing that the notification system that was part of the uh, permit building,
Yes.
um, it seemed to be built into the product as opposed to a system you created and you use. Um, and and I think that in itself was a very cool piece um, to understand how that all works. Um, because
So
in general, that everyone needs or many systems need some kind of a notification system, and to have something that you build upon that you can then call on. Because every time I do it, I build an app and then I just use send email action and don't think about building out a system that I would call, and because I'm just sending out a notice versus a
mhm.
confirmation versus a whatever. So yeah.
So just to be clear, there were no changes to the Plant and App product to make that happen. It's all a low-code implementation, but there are things that you can do. So this is kind of the data-centric approach I was talking about. If uh, if the general rule in that system was when the stage changes, we want to be able to send out any number of emails to the people who are involved who want to know. So based on that it's going from one stage to another, we want to send out one notification, different stage, maybe it's sending out 5 notifications. That um, that activity of sending out notifications was handled by one workflow. So the idea is you have one point of maintenance to maintain that workflow, and then to call it whenever the stage changes, however that gets accomplished, whether that's within other logic or as a result of an automation event or whatever. But um, it was design and implementation, not change to the product, if that
Right,
helps.
exactly, exactly. And being that uh it was in the navigation bar under a thing called setup, um, I immediately thought uh, people might think that that's part of the product, um, and it's not not making it a slight. I'm actually saying it's a great enhancement to tell somebody that you can build uh, components in your site that you can use over and over again. And that's been a favorable differentiator for me for many of the clients in that you can you can have uh, you could tell them that this product just keeps uh, doing more and more for them, and things that you develop once you could use many times over, and have a larger system than what most people think of. I need a form,
Yep.
and they just put a form on a page. They don't think about building an underlying communication system, underlying storage system, underlying whatever.
Exactly. And there's phases. There's the very simple, I just need a form and I just need a button and I just need to send email. Okay, that's simple. And then at the other end, as you implement more and more and more of those things, if each one of those, if you keep that same design pattern, now you have 50 forms with 50 buttons with 50 different emails, and where do you maintain it? So centralizing it uh, at some point, whether it's when you do the first form or when you do the fifth form, but centralizing it before it gets to be a maintenance headache is the value.
Very
Since
true.
we since we talked about this quite a bit in some other low code things, I just will point out these few here: the low code Cafe 75 and 76, and maybe some time in Campfire 159. That we talked about a design pattern where all the emails are sent from a central place rather than from individual send email actions, and why it was important to manage it that way. So if anybody wants to dig in farther, that these resources are already there and shows exactly how to do some of that. But again, we'll talk about the that design, because I think there's several things in there that would be useful in thinking about it in a think about your application in a data-driven way instead of a let's write a whole bunch of logic way is useful. So cool. With that, we're now well into overtime. I'm going to thank everyone for joining us this week. We'll do it again next week, and we'll definitely spend some time talking about the things that you want to see happen in the product, and maybe we can get some of those to bubble up in the next iterations. Hang around if you want for Afterglow. We'll see you in a bit.